Looking for magic cards? At flipsidegaming.com you can now use the promo code LVD to get a 10% discount on orders over $10 while supporting the channel at the same time. Hello and welcome to another modern gameplay video. Today we're taking a look at a Biomancer's Familiar creature combo deck, and it's a pretty spicy one, so let me walk you through it. We've got 4 copies of Biomancer's Familiar, 2 mana for a 2/2 creature that says activated abilities of creatures we control cost 2 generic mana less to activate, but they can't be reduced below 1, so we can't make an ability free. Next up we've got 4 copies of a Nest Invader, 2 mana for a 2/2 creature, and when Nest Invader enters the battlefield we get to make a 0/1 colorless Eldrazi spawn creature token that can be sacrificed to add 1 colorless mana to our mana pool. Then the third ingredient of the combo is Eldrazi Displacer, 3 mana for a 3/3 creature, and for 2 and a colorless we can exile another target creature and return it to the battlefield tapped under its owner's control, so essentially flickers a creature. And with a Biomancer's Familiar in play, the Eldrazi Displacer's ability only costs a colorless mana since we get rid of the 2 generic mana we have to pay. And then the final piece of the puzzle is Unofficial Fan Spirit, 2 mana for a 2/2 legendary creature that says whenever another non-token creature enters the battlefield under our control, we get to bolster 1, which means we choose a creature with the least amount of toughness we control and put a +1/+1 counter on it. So if we have all 4 of these cards in play at the same time, we get to add an infinite number of +1/+1 counters on each creature we control, which will usually win us the game on the spot. So the way the combo works is, because Eldrazi Displacer now only costs a single colorless mana to be activated, we can simply sacrifice the Eldrazi spawn token to activate the Displacer's ability, and the Displacer will target Nest Invader. Nest Invader enters the battlefield and generates an additional spawn token, as well as triggering Anafenza's bolster ability. And now it's important to stack these 2 triggers correctly, so we first resolve the ability from the Nest Invader, making an Eldrazi spawn token, and then still keep the Anafenza bolster trigger on the stack. And with every iteration of the loop we get to add an additional bolster trigger from Anafenza on the stack, and once we are satisfied with the number of bolster triggers on the stack, we can let them all resolve, and now all our creatures will become enormous. So that's the way the combo works. Of course we do have a bit of a redundancy in the deck to make sure we can assemble the combo reliably. And yeah, let me walk you through it. So at 1 mana we've got some mana generators, 4 copies of Birds of Paradise, 4 copies of Noble Hierarch to speed things up. We also have 3 copies of Training Grounds, which has the same ability as Biomancer's Familiar, but it's just a 1 mana enchantment, so a bit more difficult for the opponent to interact with. Then we've got our 4 copies of Biomancer's Familiar, or 4 Nest Invaders. Then we've got 4 copies of Duskwatch Recruiter, which is also a very important piece of the puzzle, 2 mana for a 2/2 creature, and for 2 and a green we can look at the top 3 cards of our library and then reveal a creature card from among those and put it into our hand. And of course if the ability gets reduced by Familiar and Training Grounds, so now only costs a single green to be activated, which is a very cheap way for us to filter through the deck and find all the missing combo pieces to assemble our combo. Recruiter can also transform into Howler, but we're mainly interested in the front side of the card. Then we've got our 2 copies of Anafenza, 2 copies of Eternal Witness that can return a card from our graveyard back to our hand if we lost one of our combo pieces, and also works very nicely alongside Eldrazi Displacer, since we can keep blinking Eternal Witness to return cards from our graveyard back to our hands. Displacer also just a very powerful card by itself, since it can kind of control the board, flickering opposing creatures, preventing them from attacking, or protecting our creatures from removal by flickering them. And if we have 2 copies of Eldrazi Displacer, they can protect themselves as well, which is pretty nice. We do need to make sure that we have some lands in our mana base that can produce colorless mana, so we can activate the Displacer outside of having the Eldrazi spawn token to sacrifice, since we want to be able to activate the Displacer multiple times in the same turn, if possible. And then to top of our curve we've got 4 copies of Collected Company, where we get to look at the top 6 cards of our library, reveal up to 2 creatures with converted mana cost 3 or less, which includes all the creatures in this deck, and then put them on the battlefield right away. So that's another very powerful tool. And then we also have 4 copies of Court of Calling that we can use to search up any missing combo piece from our deck. And then taking a look at our mana base, we've got a total of 9 lands that can produce colorless mana for Eldrazi Displacer, 4 brush lands, 4 Yavimaya Coast, and then 1 Gavany Township that also has a nice activated ability, putting +1/+1 counters on all our creatures, which is nice if we're on the plan B of just attacking with creatures. Then we've got 1 of each basic land, a forest, island, and plains. Then we've got 1 of each shock land, Hallowed Fountain, Temple Garden, and a Breeding Pool, and then 6 fetch lands, 2 Misties, and 4 Windswept Heath. Then taking a quick look at our sideboard, we've got 2 copies of Path of Exile as creature removal, 2 Stony Silence against artifact decks, 2 Rest in Peace as graveyard hate, Scavenging Ooze can also help against graveyard decks, and we can search it up with our Court of Calling or find it with our Collected Company or Duskwatch Recruiter. We've got a Meddling Mage against combo decks. Spellskite can protect our creatures from removal and can also come in against Burn and Bogles. We've got a Deputy of Detention as kind of a catch-all removal spell in creature form. Eidolon of Rhetoric against the combo decks like Storm. 2 copies of Knight of Autumn as a pretty versatile card that can gain a bit of life against the burn decks or destroy artifacts and enchantments. And then 2 Kitchen Finks as another resilient threat that shines against the burn decks. And of course all the creatures with Enter the Battlefield abilities get even better alongside Eldrazi Displacer. So that's our deck. Now let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. Alright, we're on the draw with a Nodelander, so let's go to 6. Alright, this is a little bit better, I guess. A bit slow, no accelerants, and only one of our combo pieces, but we'll keep the snowball on top. Alright, turn 1 Thraben Inspector off of a Flagstones, so some sort of mono-white Martyr deck perhaps. Let's get our Temple Garden. And there we see a Myriad, a Sky Ruin, and a Serra Ascendant. Alright. Take 1 down to 16. So let's just play the Familiar and fetch land and pass a turn. No attacks from our opponents. End of turn we can fetch and get a Breeding Pool. Although I could also make a case for Hallowed Fountain. And we'll go with a pool. Alright, so this turn we're just gonna Collected Company. Could attack for 3 with the Familiar. Maybe it's fine to attack here, since we're likely to find some blockers with the Collected Company anyway. Opponent's gonna sack a Clue. And our opponent's gonna take 3. 4 mana. It's gonna be Gideon, Ally of Zendikar. Definitely a card we'll need to get rid of, if we can. And the Serra Ascendant does attack. It's a little bit risky. Into a potential Collected Company. Let's see what we can find. Nest Invader and the birds. And we get to eat the Serra Ascendant here. Opponent could easily have a Sweeper effect in hand, which is why they don't care too much about the Serra Ascendant there, but we're still happy to be able to kill it. Alright, Duskwatch Recruiter was a nice pickup. So if we play Recruiter, we can still activate it multiple times here, 4 times in fact. We do have a Court of Calling that could find one of the missing combo pieces, either Anafenza or Displacer, but Displacer is pretty expensive to court for. So I think it's pretty unlikely that we can actually assemble the combo this turn. We could also just activate Gavany Township here and pressure Gideon that way. I guess what we can do is attack Nest Invader on Gideon and just let the Exalted trigger happen, see our opponent wants to block. If they do double block, then I'll activate Township, otherwise we can play the Duskwatch and activate it a few times. Opponent just chumps. Yeah, it's probably fine to play out the Duskwatch here. If they do have a Sweeper effect, we still get to activate our Duskwatch 4 times and find 4 additional creatures. Probably worth it. And then we still have Eternal Witness returning Collected Company as a nice play. And it's gonna be Path on Duskwatch, so let's activate it a bunch of times here. Find Displacer and another Duskwatch. I think we'll take Displacer for now. Find Anafenza, so we've got the combo next turn if they don't have additional removal. Nest Invader, so even if they wipe the board here, we might be able to assemble the combo once again, although it is going to take a few turns since we don't have the mana to deploy everything. I guess we'll go with another Nest Invader. Could also take a Noble. I guess we'll take a Noble. In case they do wipe the board, we might want the extra mana creature. And then we can get probably a Plains here. Field of Ruin on Township, that's fine. So our opponent needs another Path to Exile here, otherwise they're dead. Take a Forest. Gideon makes a token. and Martyr of Sands. They've got one card left in hand. Alright, let's play Displacer. Play on Offensa, probably could have done it the other way around to get an extra bolster trigger. And yeah, there we go, we've got the combo. So Displacer targets Nest Invader, and we're off to the races. Alright, we got there, so on to sideboarding against the Martyr. I think Rest in Peace deserves a bit of credit here, since it can potentially shut down any loops where they return cards from their graveyard. So that's a consideration. Deputy could answer one of their Planeswalkers. Path could answer one of their creatures, but I don't think we really care too much. Meddling Mage could maybe shut down some Sweeper effect or Path to Exile, but I think it's a little bit too narrow, since they probably have multiple Sweeper effects with different names anyway. And I guess Scavenging Ooze kind of in the same vein as Rest in Peace. Spellsky to counter Path to Exile doesn't seem worth it. Not sure about Night of Autumn. Is there any artifact or enchantment that we should really kill? Can't think of any. So mainly just Rest in Peace, Ooze, and maybe Deputy as considerations. What don't we like? Well, I guess if we're bringing in some Graveyard Hate, Eternal Witness gets a bit worse, and our opponent has mostly exile-based removal as well, which makes Witness worse. Can of course still return Collected Company or Chord, but less likely to return a useful creature. And I could see shaving some mana creatures in case of Sweeper effects. Alright, we're on the draw, and our hand looks reasonable. Turn 1 Martyr. So I think we just want to play the Birds of Paradise for now. We could just get a basic forest here so we don't take too much damage. Although our opponent does have a bunch of Field of Ruins, which makes me want to keep the basic lands in our deck. So I guess we just get a Breeding Pool. Martyr attacks for 1. We'll take it. And gets Sacrifice, revealing Path, Ascendant, Squadron Hawk, and Ranger of Eos. And they now have a 6/6 Sarah Ascendant. Alright, that's gonna provide quite a bit of pressure here. And they have a Path to Exile as Disruption, so don't love our start here, but we'll see what we can do. If we play Duskwatch plus Training Grounds, our opponent's gonna Path it right away. So I think we would rather just Ooze plus Training Grounds, and then next turn we can Recruiter plus Activate right away. That seems better to me. So let's play lands and run out to Ooze and play Training Grounds. And then next turn we have the play of Duskwatch plus Activate 2 times to find 2 creatures. In the meantime we'll take some abuse from this Sarah Ascendant. Alright, we get to untap, Noble Hierarch to pick up, but we're just gonna play the Duskwatch here, I think. And then we might as well attack for 2 with the Ooze. Let's get in there. And pass the turn. Gonna see a Path on the Recruiter end of turn here, and then we'll activate it. And what do we find? Nest Invader and Birds of Paradise. We'll take a Nest Invader. Activate it a second time. Take on Offensa. Alright, so we're just missing Eldrazi Displacer at this point. And we get to search up a land. I guess we'll take a basic Plains. Make it easier to cast on Offensa. So can kind of see how a Recruiter is just great in this deck, providing a ton of card selection and advantage. And the opponent's kind of forced to kill the Recruiter, which is not part of the combo to go infinite, so that's also an advantage there. Alright, so can we assemble the combo? We do have a Chord of Calling, which can get Eldrazi Displacer, but it is going to cost us quite a bit of mana to do so. So we can play on Offensa. Go down to 1. Get a forest. Play Nest Invader. Get some bolster triggers as well. And we could Court of Calling for 3 to get Displacer, but then all our creatures will be tapped, so we can't actually attack for lethal. So the plan here is to chump block with our Birds of Paradise, since the Saracendant has flying, and then before damage tap it for Convoke, so we can Court of Calling for Eldrazi Displacer, and then next turn we should be able to go off and win the game. Still know about Squadron Hawk and Ranger of Eos in the opponent's hand. Martyr of Sands as well. So they don't have Path, so they should be dead here. Sarah Ascendant attacks. We'll block. And then before damage we can Chord. And that does it. Our opponent knows what's incoming and scoops him up. Awesome, so we managed to assemble the combo twice here. And our opponent did have a little bit of interaction with the Path, but was forced both times to use it on the Recruiter instead of one of the combo pieces. Alright, on to the next one. Alright, we're on the play, and our hand seems keepable. I think we go Breeding Pool into Noble here. And next turn we can Duskwatch, and then turn 3 we can Collected Company. Untapped Blood Crypt for Lightning Bolt, taking out Noble. Alright, that slows us down a little bit, but we're just gonna play the Duskwatch here. And then next turn we can activate Duskwatch, and turn 4 Collected Company. If our opponent does nothing, then the Duskwatch would transform into Howler, which is not actually a thing we want. So we'll see what they do. Alright, it's gonna be Gifted Aetherborn, that's fine. So let's just play the Plains, and then we want to activate Recruiter right now, I suppose, otherwise it flips. And find another Recruiter. Could also activate it in the opponent's upkeep before it transforms, but that's kind of the same as just activating now. So we've got a 3/3 Howler, making our creature spells cost 1 generic mana less to cast, but the plan next turn is just to Company. Opponent offers the trade, we'll take it. And Thoughtseize can take away Collected Company, sadly. And they also have a Light Up the Stage. And what did they exile? 2 lands, so not the most relevant. And they play the Marshflats. Howler's about to transform once again. And pick up a land. We're just gonna attack and then activate Recruiter an additional time, I think. Could activate main phase in case we pick up a mana creature. That seems worth it to me. Alright, find Familiar and Displacer. Displacer is a bit more high impact by itself, but Familiar alongside Recruiter is quite powerful, so I think we'll still take it. And then we can just play a fetch land and fetch end of turn. Recruiter will transform once again. Opponent plays a Dragonskull Summit from exile. Attacks us for 2. And end of turn will fetch. Probably a Temple Garden here. Untap. So we can play a 1 mana Recruiter, 2 mana for Familiar, and then activate Recruiter once. And then Howler will also transform back into Recruiter. So that seems decent. Guess we'll attack first here. And I guess we can just fetch for an island, so we don't take too much damage. Play Recruiter. Play Familiar. Did not mean to float a white mana, but it doesn't really matter here. Opponent's got a Kolaghan's Command, making us discard, killing Recruiter, that's okay. We'll discard a fetch line, I think. Since now the first Recruiter still transforms back, so in the opponent's turn we can still activate it once. Unless they've got additional instant speed removal, and they kill it before it transforms back, or kill the Familiar before it transforms back. So that happens. Alright, so we will end of turn be able to activate a Recruiter once more. Alright, it's going to be Dreadbore on Familiar, so in response we'll activate Recruiter. And find another Recruiter. Well, Recruiter is a good way to beat these removal heavy decks, since we can find lots more creatures. But it is going to be difficult to assemble the entire combo, since it requires 4 creatures to stay in play. Alright, find another Familiar, so that's nice. Let's play a brushland, play familiar. And we'll just activate. Find another recruiter, that's the last one. I think we'll just activate again main phase. In case we find something we want to play. Eternal Witness is pretty good. And I guess now we can pass a turn. Might as well attack for 2. Eternal Witness could get back our collected company, but we might just be better off activating Recruiter a bunch of times. Aetherborn gets in for 2, down to 8. And another Kolaghan's command, dealing 2, making us discard. We'll activate Recruiter in response, and find another familiar, I think, over Nest Invader. Although if we got Nest Invader, then we could have more easily gotten back familiar with the Eternal Witness. I think we'll discard a Recruiter. Can probably make better use of the land. Alright, so all we're missing now is Anafenza and Nest Invader. We've got all the other combo pieces, and Displacer by itself is just very strong on this board, especially alongside Familiar. Can play Familiar, play Displacer, and then we can attack for 2. And then we have the flexibility of either activating Recruiter twice or Recruiter once and using Eldrazi Displacer once. But for now I think we pass a turn. Opponent moves to combat. We could take another 2 down to 5, but we are getting pretty low, so our opponent could burn us out potentially. So I think we just use the Displacer here to prevent 2 damage essentially. And end of turn we'll activate Recruiter. And what do we get? Probably another Displacer over birds. Alright, so we've got our engine online here. In response to Recruiter transforming, I think we'll activate it a few more times. Find more Displacers. More mana creatures. So do we want to activate it once again, or let it transform? I think we do activate it once again. Alright, that's a miss. Alright, now we'll let the Recruiter flip, I think. And we can just go on the beatdown plan here. So let's attack with everyone. So do we commit an additional creature to the board, or do we respect a sweeper effect? I think we hold what we have and just pass a turn here. Could have potentially played an additional Displacer so we can beat a single spot removal spell, but it feels unnecessary to play more stuff out in the face of a potential sweeper. Alright, Inquisition can probably take away a Witness or another Displacer. Not much we can do about that one. And our opponent just concedes, alright, too much for them to handle. So our grindy game plan of just activating Duskwatch a bunch of times worked out. So pretty removal heavy deck, not sure what our opponent's win conditions are. How do we want to sideboard? Our opponent's likely to have stuff like Anger of the Gods, potential Damnations in the sideboard for the matchup, but there's not much in the sideboard that we really want. Kitchen Finks is resilient against spot removal, but we don't really care about the life gain or the 3/2 body too much, and it still dies to Anger. Spellskite could be okay. It's pretty bad against Kolaghan's command since they get to destroy an artifact, but it can redirect a lightning bolt, so I guess Spellskite could be okay. And then I will cut a Birds of Paradise in case of sweeper effects, and we'll try this. Alright, we've got a pretty awkward opening hand without any green mana, so I don't think we can keep. Alright, this is a little bit better, but if the birds dies, we're stranded on 1 mana. Hope to scry into a land. Training Grounds is nice as it dodges removal, but don't think we can keep it here. Just need lands. And we do have almost every combo piece we need, but of course against a hand disruption and removal heavy deck, that's not going to be the case for long. At least no Lightning Bolt on the Birds of Paradise right away. It's going to be Gifted Aetherborn turn 2 again. Alright, I guess we'll play a Nest Invader here, which makes a bit of mana. We'll take 2. And another Aetherborn, alright. Plains was a good draw, so now what, we can just play Eldrazi Displacer, or we can end of turn Collected Company, sacking the Eldrazi spawn token. I think I do like Company a little bit better than just Displacer here. So we'll pass a turn. And then we can chump block with the spawn token and then sack it to make mana to cast a Company. And we also prevent the 2 life gain from the Etherborn that we block with the spawn token. 4 mana for Chandra, Torch of Defiance. That's definitely a pretty good one here. Since before in the previous game they were lacking a way to kind of consistently get ahead. But that's no longer going to be the case with Chandra in play. Alright, we're forced to sack the sign token right now to cast a Company. And we find Familiar plus Displacer. So if we get very lucky and top deck a white source, we can play on Offensa and we would have the combo. Alternatively, we can just get Displacer plus a Noble Hierarch, and then we already have a Familiar in hand to combo off with, but then it's not going to be possible for us to actually combo off next turn. I think we do get Displacer. I guess we'll go for the Noble here. Birds dies. Alright, we did top deck Yavimaya Coast, so we can get all our combo pieces in play. The issue is that we don't have the 1 colorless mana in play already to kickstart a combo. Plus, we also wouldn't have enough creatures to actually attack for lethal. So what's our play? Probably just play Biomancer's Familiar, and then pass a turn with a bunch of Eldrazi Displacer activations up, I guess just 1. And then try and combo off next turn. Seems reasonable. And we'll keep up the Displacer's ability to protect our Biomancer's Familiar. So we could activate Displacer an infinite number of times there, but it wouldn't actually get us anywhere. But once we play on Offensa, that's gonna change. So the Etherborn's attack will just take 4 here. Don't really care too much about taking 4 if we're about to deal infinite damage anyway. Chandra makes mana. Alright, that's making me a little bit nervous. Anger of the Gods, yeah, that's a bummer. So not much we can do about that one. So that happens. Alright, it's gonna be difficult to assemble the combo now that we're missing all those cards. But yeah, we were pretty close. And now a Blood Moon as well. That's gonna make things even more challenging, although we can still cast our Eldrazi Displacers. So the plan is to play Displacer, hope they don't have removal, kill Chandra, go from there. But yeah, Blood Moon plus Anger of the Gods was pretty painful here. Opponent is also down to all red mana, but there's a Swamp. Kolaghan's Command does not kill Displacer, but they could have a Dreadbore, I suppose. Yeah, there's a Dreadbore. And next turn they can just minus Chandra to kill the Displacer. And Stormbreath Dragon, alright. That's gonna close out the game pretty quickly. So yeah, we were super close to assembling the combo. Had we taken Familiar plus Displacer with the Collected Company and then top decked the white source, then we would have had lethal. It's possible we should have gone for that line. We didn't top deck the white source, so we wouldn't have gotten there. But it's possible that we were more likely to get there by just going for the higher risk, higher rewards play instead of getting the mana creature. But the mana creature would allow us to assemble the combo over the course of 2 turns. So we'll play another Displacer here. But it's pretty unlikely that we'll get there. Opponent reveals Thoughtseize. I think at this point we can learn more from the opponent's deck than they can learn from our deck. So we're down to 4. And Yavimaya Coast is not gonna cut it. Alright, let's go to a game 3 here. So yeah, Anger of the Gods, as we suspected, came in. Blood Moon as well. Blood Moon's pretty effective if they combine it with the sweeper effect, since if we still have our mana creatures, then we can still use them for mana. But once those are gone as well, then we do have a lot of non-basic lands in our mana base. Path to Exile doesn't answer Stormbreath Dragon, so don't have much to board in here. Deputy could exile Chandra, but they have so much removal that it's not a reliable plan. Could bring in Meddling Mage, naming a sweeper effect, but they've got so much spot removal for Meddling Mage that I don't think it's worth it. So the only consideration is Night of Autumn to destroy a Blood Moon. But once a Blood Moon hits the battlefield, it's difficult for us to cast a Night of Autumn, unless we have some mana creatures in play, so it's not the most reliable plan. But I guess we could try bringing in 1 copy. And then do we still like the Spell's Guide? I think we do. And I could see cutting an Offensa, since we're not super likely to be able to assemble the combo in this matchup. Although we were pretty close in the previous game. Alright, let's try this. would like to be on the play, and our hand looks pretty good. Let's get a Temple Garden. Could of course fetch some basic lands as well to play around Blood Moon. Get a forest here, for example. Sure, let's get a forest. Play Hierarch. Maybe could have gone Misty Rainforest, get a forest, and then Windswept Heath, get a Plains. Alright, there's Biomancer's Familiar. I guess we could get a basic island as well with the Misty Rainforest. And then just play Familiar this turn, attack for 1. And then next turn we have the option of Company or Recruiter plus Activate. And I don't think I want to play the second Noble Hierarch here. Even though we could go Noble plus Familiar, since I don't want to overextend into a sweeper effect. And we might still need the Noble afterwards. Get islands, play Familiar. Of course, if they just kill the Noble Hierarch with spot removal, we're gonna regret not playing the other Noble, since then we can no longer play the Company, but that seems acceptable. Alright, it's gonna be Dreadbore killing Familiar. So this turn the plan is just to cast a Company. Gifted Aetherborn, that's fine. End of turn will Company. See what we get. Displacer and another Noble, I think. Untap, on Offensa. We could end of turn Company again. We could play Recruiter activated once. I guess we'll go with the Company end of turn instead of Recruiter here. I would rather play Recruiter if we can activate it right away multiple times instead of just once. And if they do have a sweeper effect, we don't play another creature into it, and we can always float mana and then play Company after the sweeper resolves if they decide to pull the trigger this turn. But they might wait an additional turn before playing a sweeper effect. So there is also the argument for just activating Displacer end of turn on Aetherborn and then attacking them for 5. Don't know if that's better than going for the Company here, since we don't want to commit too much into a sweeper. Yeah, I guess I like it. If our opponent did something this turn, then our line of play would have been different, but it feels like they're just holding on to something like an Anger or Damnation. And if that's the case, we might as well play around it. Alright, so we've got all our basic lands, so Blood Moon's not a concern. We'll attack for 5, and then just pass a turn once again. And let our opponent make the first move. Alright, Lightning Bolt on Displacer in response to the Exalted triggers, so we'll let that resolve. And now we could play Recruiter and still end of turn Company. Opponent attacks for 2, we'll take it. And Anger of the Gods. So we can go for the end of turn Company, or we can try and get more value by activating the Duskwatch. I guess activating Duskwatch is reasonable. If we had more action in hand, then I might go for the Company instead. And we find Familiar and Nest Invader. I think we prefer Familiar here. Anger happens. And I hope they don't have a Thoughtseize for the Company. But given that they're fetching, it seems unlikely. Maybe a Spectacle card here. Soulscar Mage instead. It's unexpected. Alright. Nest Invader the pickup, so all we're missing to assemble the combo is our Eldrazi Displacer. But of course we need quite a bit of mana to get everything in play. I think I like end of turn Company once again, and go from there. It's gonna be another Aetherborn, and the Mage stays back, respecting the Company. Ooh, that's a miss. Just a Birds of Paradise. That's not good. Untap, pick up a Misty Rainforest. Alright, well, we were counting on that Company to find us some action. Displacers, Recruiters. All we got was a Birds of Paradise. Now we're definitely in a bit of trouble. I guess we'll fetch. Get a Temple Garden. Play on Offensa. Play Nest Invader. Bolster. Put a counter on the birds. And then attack for 1. Think we keep Noble in hand still. And if we do top deck Eldrazi Displacers, then we can play Familiar, Displacer, and combo off. 5 mana, as this is Stormbreath Dragon again. Ooh, Demigod of Revenge instead. Alright. So 5/4 Flying Haste. And Demigod is getting in there. So I think we'll take it still. Untap. Court of Calling. Alright. Yeah, that should work. And then the Birds of Paradise can become enormous and kill the opponent. Alright. Nice. So bolster, doesn't matter. Court for 3. Leave the Birds of Paradise untapped, since once we add infinite +1/+1 counters everywhere, we still need to kill our opponents. And Flying Birds of Paradise is gonna do just that. So we'll get Displacer, bolster, and then we can activate Displacer targeting Invader, sacking the Sign token, bolster, and we've got the combo here. Alright, sweet, on to the next one. Alright, we're on the play. Weird looking hand, 4 mana creatures, 1 land. Yeah, I guess we'll keep. Lead with a Noble. Next turn we can go a double mana creature, and then the turn after Company. Tapped Sacred Foundry, so probably not Burn. Not sure what other decks play Sacred Foundry nowadays. Alright, we'll just play some more mana creatures here. I guess we can diversify with the Birds of Paradise. Alright, Lightning Bolt takes out Noble. But they must have drawn it, otherwise they probably would have cast it last turn. Alright, so we're unable to cast our Company this turn, sadly. But we can go Nest Invader plus Noble. And we're slowly starting to assemble all the combo pieces. We've got Nest Invader, Displacer, and Accord that can get Familiar or Anafenza. It's going to be Lightning Helix on Noble, so maybe they are a burn deck, but just a very weird draw. Who knows? And pointing their burn spells at our creatures is also pretty unusual, so maybe it is some sort of control deck after all. Recruiter, not a bad pickup. We could cast a Company, sacking the Spawn token. Alternatively, we could court for X equals 2, which is enough to get Familiar or Anafenza. I think we prefer going for the Company, but it does involve sacking the Spawn token, so we lose 1 mana compared to Chord, where we can just tap it for Convoke. I think we just attack for 2 in Company, since if we can find both Anafenza and Familiar with the Company, then we're in business. And just finding more creatures to pressure the opponent with seems nice. Could have done it main phase in case we found another Noble for the extra Exalted trigger, but you never know, opponent could have some sweeper effects. Seeker of the Way. Alright, so they do have some creatures in there, and they paid 2 life for the Godless Shrine, so maybe wanted to keep up a removal spell here, but we're still gonna Company. And we find Familiar and Nest Invader. Alright, so we have all the tools we need to assemble the combo. Question is, does our opponent have more removal? So can we actually go off this turn? We can play Displacer, and then we can court for 2, and then we would have 1 enormous attacker, but our opponent could still chump block, so we don't quite have lethal guaranteed. Also the fact that they play the Godless Shrine untapped makes it pretty likely that they have some interaction anyway. If that's the case, what's our plan? Could also play Duskwatch and activate it once or twice, I guess, if we sack the Eldrazi Spawn token. But I think we're just gonna play the birds. And then end of turn, Chord for 2, getting Anafenza, and then try to combo off next turn. Don't really want to attack into a prowess creature on the ground, but I guess we're fine to attack with the birds for 1. Alright, let's pass a turn. Opponent did nothing end of turn. It's gonna be a bump in the night, enabling prowess on the Seeker, that's fine, so looks like they are a burn deck after all. Relic of Progenitus, doesn't matter too much here. And a Mishra's Bauble, so they get to enable prowess a bunch of times. Seeker attacks, we could chump block it if we wanted to. Taking 5 down to 9 seems pretty safe still. Could also chump it with the Spawn and sacrifice it so they don't gain the 5 life and we might just be able to race. Yeah, I think we just take it. And our opponent's gonna fire off a Manamorphose. Alright, more prowess triggers. Hopefully they just tap out here so we can safely combo off. And it's gonna be Gut Shot on the Noble Hierarch. That's fine. Tap it for mana, I guess. but we can still court for 2 without a noble. Alright, and they sack the relic, so now they're completely tapped out, and we should be able to combo them. So let's cord. I guess they could have another gut shot, but that doesn't kill any of our combo pieces. So let's get Anafenza. We're down to 7, but now we get to untap. Play Displacer. Displacer flickers Nest Invader. And that's the combo assembled. Alright, our opponent has seen enough. Onto sideboarding. So Mardu, Burn of some variety. Looks like Kitchen Finks and Night of Autumn are coming in. Spellskite can redirect burn spells, so that seems good enough. And could also make a case for Scavenging Ooze. Can maybe gain us a little bit of life back, and can also gobble up some of the flashback cards like Bump in the Night. Path to Exile could also be reasonable at killing some of the early creatures they play, since this is probably a matchup where we're not going to combo off and instead just try and beat down and get a bit of value from Company and Recruiter. Could see cutting the Trading Grounds, since we want to keep the creature count high enough. I could see cutting an Anafenza, just keeping 1 in case we do manage to assemble the combo somehow. Maybe shave a Nest Invader or 2. Familiar's still okay since it combos with Recruiter and Displacer. And then 2 more cuts, maybe cut a Witness, which can be a little slow. And then maybe shave 1 Familiar. So we are taking out quite a few combo pieces, but we are adding a ton of life gain and some resilient creatures that can just beat down and win the game the old-fashioned way. Alright, we're on the draw, and don't have the best hand here, just the birds as likely to die, and then we would only have 1 land. If we do find some lands off the top, this hand could be good, but I think it's a little too risky. Alright, well, still a 1-lander, but we get a Scry, and we have 2 mana creatures this time, plus a Night of Autumn, which is supposed to be pretty good here. So I think we'll keep, and we'll keep the Misty on top. Alright, no 1-drop once again. So they are an unconventional burn deck. I think we'll just get a basic forest here to preserve our life total. And then play a birds. Since I would prefer to keep the noble over the birds, and the birds is likely to die. Alright, gets Gutshot. Gutshot is pretty good against all our mana creatures, that's for sure. But we are not under any pressure. And we have removal plus a bit of life gain, which is a good recipe. Untapped Godless Shrine. Into Bump in the Night, down to 16. Alright, so we could take 2 to play a Nest Invader, or we can just play a tap Temple Garden and play Noble, which seems a little bit better. Opponent's already down to 15 after taking some damage from their gut shots and their mana base. So we don't need to deal the full 20 points of damage to kill our opponents. It's gonna be another Bump in the Night. Alright, Yavimaya Coast to pick up. So if we didn't pick up a land, I would have played the Night of Autumn here, but since we did, I think we just want to double Nest Invader. And now we've got a bit of pressure in play to attack their life total, Night of Autumn to gain us 4 life. So we're not in a bad spot. And there's a Seeker of the Way that we can Path to Exile. We'll give them an extra land, which helps them flash back the Bump in the Night. So that's definitely a drawback of Path to Exile. So what's our plan here? I think we do want to Path right now, so we can get in some attacks. Alternatively, we could play Recruiter, chump block with Eldrazi spawn tokens on the Seeker, and then sacrifice them to use the ability so they don't gain any life. Then that also means that we're probably not attacking. So let's just Path. And then attack for 4. Play Night of Autumn, gaining 4. I guess we'll do that now. Just in case they decide to kill the Noble. Could also decide to put counters on the Night of Autumn, but I think just gaining 4's a little bit safer. And then attack for 4. And then we can use the spawn tokens as maybe chump blockers, or as ways to activate the Recruiter's ability. Opponent does have 6 mana, but they're not going to flashback Bump in the Night. Instead it's going to be Manamorphose into Mishra's Bauble. All the free prowess enablers. And interesting, they decided not to flashback Bump in the Night. It is 6 mana. So maybe they have other plans. Opponent gets to draw from Bauble. And Kitchen Fink's an excellent top deck. So we'll attack for 6, play Kitchen Finks. I suppose we could also kind of hold back, and instead of playing Kitchen Finks into a potential Anger of the Gods, play Duskwatch, and then we can activate Duskwatch. Might be better. Since we have lethal next turn anyway, and at 17 life, we're pretty far away from getting burnt out. It's going to be Lightning Bolt on the Duskwatch. We'll activate it once on the way out. Find Eldrazi Displacer. It's a good pickup. And your opponent needs a sweeper effect here, essentially. But then they probably wouldn't have bolted the Duskwatch. A Relic of Progenitus that they can cycle. But also gets rid of all the bumps in the night. Not a relic, so opponent kind of spinning their wheels. But even against a more conventional version of Burn, with Night of Autumn, Kitchen Finks and the Path to Exile, we would have been in a pretty good spot, I think. And that does it, sweet, so we managed to win all 3 games, which is pretty impressive. And most of those games we won by assembling the combo, which is not something I expected going in, necessarily, since the combo does require 4 different creatures to stay alive, but maybe also a little bit of unfamiliarity with the combo from the opponent's side, which gave us a leg up. So yeah, that's going to do it for today's gameplay. I want to thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, and as always, have a nice day. I also want to thank all my patrons for being part of the channel, and you can become a patron yourself today and decide the topic of future videos over at patreon.com/LegenVD.